Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. How lovely to see you all. I'm absolutely thrilled and delighted to have the wonderful Ali Coffey here with us today. Super thrilled, very excited to have you here. How's it going, Ali Coffey? How are you? And for those of us,
very well. Thank you so much for having me.
You're very, very welcome. It's lovely to have you here. And tell us, for those of you who don't know you, tell us a little about yourself. How did you get into all of this? Nobody becomes a casting director. They don't choose, do they? Or do they?
Absolutely. I think rarely a one has actually like sat in school at 5 years old and said, I know what I want to be, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
So it's something we've all, I think, nearly, and it's something I'd like to change by educating, you know, by getting involved a little bit more as people are coming up and telling them a bit more about these niche areas of our business and that people don't know about. So my path was a little bit roundabout, like a lot of people's in my profession. So I left school at 15 and I got a part in a film in an indie flick called How to Cheat in the Leaving Cert. And I just totally agreed with everything it stated, which was that I didn't need my Leaving Cert, that piece of paper was nothing for me, that school was not meant for me. And so, well, my parents were aghast. That was it. I never went back. I never studied another day in my life and had no sort of formal training, but decided I wanted to act.
Yeah.
So I did. And I was very good at auditioning. I wasn't so good at the acting of the actual role. I could talk my way into jobs really well because I guess I was so young that they weren't used to kind of precocious 16-year-olds coming in and being like blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
So they kind of hired me on the basis of kind of character rather than acting ability, I should say. You know, I really feel in retrospect, looking back, that's what happened. And I'm being totally sincere. Like I know what I'm good at. I know what I'm not. And trust me, my acting talent is mediocre at best. And I enjoy my bits of reading in and my bits of you know, I still do some voiceovers and things like that. So I enjoy little bits of performance. But as an actor, I realized it wasn't for me about 5 years in. So I was now about 20 and I'd done a few series and soaps and things over in the UK. I'd been really fortunate. I jobbed along, you know, I'd had gaps in between of like a year between a job, and in between I'd chaperoned, I delivered flowers, I'd been an AD, I worked in a nightclub, I ran nightclub nights, I did every little bit of gig you can imagine.
Wow.
And I loved the business, and I loved chaperoning on film sets. I learned so much, you know, from talking to everybody in the crew. So at the time I was still auditioning, and Gillian Reynolds, who you'll know, of course, she was auditioning me for EastEnders, and I didn't get the part, but I've been down to the last five. Through 5 auditions down to the last 2. And we were in the Herbert Park Hotel, all the crew were over from BBC, and I didn't get it. And it was one of those like, you know, kind of moments. We've all been there. Yeah. And she told me she was about to start work on an indie feature, and would I like to be her assistant? And I jumped at the chance. It was really kind of like a little bit of a silver lining that day, because I thought, well, at very least, she's going to discover me and know I'm amazing for every other project she ever does. Yeah. And then I got bitten by the bug of casting. Yeah. Working with Gillian, sitting in on this film that we were working on, which turned out to be, it was about a group of Irish students going over on a J1 visa to New York. And we cast Cillian Murphy and a host of other great actors who were very young then. And it was
whatever happened to him? I mean, you know, isn't it?
Yeah,
Who knew? Isn't that
could have been everything.
Yeah.
Well, when Gillian would say to me, maybe you know, and the producer was had been Woody Allen's producer, Jean Domanian, and it was really interesting, and sometimes we'd be there auditioning people at midnight because they'd been in a play, and it was just a crazy time. And I loved it. I just lapped up anything that was unconventional, and I thought, this is what I could do for a living. I love it. So then they would say to me, what did you think? And I would have seen, say, 4 people read the same character, you know, and I'd throw in my tuppence worth, and they'd feedback of why they agreed or didn't agree with me. And I started to learn the trade. And like learn it as you learn anything else, and see what we were looking for, note what screen acting was and the differences between stage and screen. And because at that point, screen was all I knew. And so then I started immersing myself in the theatre world, started working for Gillian as an assistant for longer. Then we became partners, and then we split ways then after a few years of that, very amicably, and we just went off in our own directions.
Yeah.
And I set up Ali Coffey Casting in 2002. So I was only 22 at that point. And now we still collaborated. I still worked with Gillian for a few more years, and then we were totally separate. So so I've been on my own now for a long time, 15 years or more. And now I've got a great team with me. Katie's been with me for 11 years, and Sarah and Alison and Becky, and we all make up our own team. Wow. Then I started Fishpond, which is kind of like an Irish spotlight, in 2008. And that's been going from strength to strength for the last 12 years. So I've been really kind of fortunate to learn an awful lot about every side of the business, and have some really great people working alongside me now who are with me on every project, and it's become a really enjoyable.
I love it. I had no idea. I didn't know this. It's so fantastic. I mean, I love the idea that you went to see a movie. The movie was about behave badly at school or something like that.
Well, that's right. It was how to cheat on your leaving cert.
I love it. I think it's wonderful.
It changed my life.
Well, absolutely did change your life. And I think that's one of the wonderful things about this business, isn't it? It genuinely does change people's lives.
Definitely.
You know, and you know, when you're in the whole notion of sort of storytelling itself, it is one of those things, you know, it makes you realize that actually it is that powerful, what it is that we're doing.
Damn right. That's a really, really good point. So, like one film, one book, one play can change your life.
Totally, absolutely true. All the teachers that used to say that, and you think, no, it is true. And then, what did you love about it once you got the kind of the buzz of this midnight thing and everything going on, how exciting it was, and the buzz and sending out for coffee and all that, and what was it that you started to love about the process? What was it in the process itself that got you?
Well, I think the very first time when and this happened to one of our assistants recently, and she definitely got bitten by the bug. The very first time I suggested somebody as an assistant that I had seen audition for something else earlier, you know, a different project earlier in the year, and I said, what about so-and-so? And then they got the role. That buzz of thinking, I was instrumental in that. I had a hand in that coming to fruition, and that person being in that. That was, I knew for me, it was creative, it was interesting, it was I had more power to create work for myself than I did as I felt as an actor then, that I could maybe be a little bit more in charge of my own destiny. Now that's true and untrue, because we have peaks and troughs the same as all actors, you know?
Absolutely.
Loved.
I love the idea that you talk about that, because it's the meaningful nature of it, isn't it? Is that it actually does matter, you know? And I think, you know, it's one of the reasons I want to do this kind of thing, is to kind of clear the sort of the misconceptions and the myths about you know, I mean, I grew up with kind of the whole notion of casting people as being these kind of gatekeepers, you know, the gatekeepers of the destiny, as if they were all sort of walked in off a kind of like Game of Thrones set.
Same here.
You know, and there was something kind of like, you know, these scary people.
Yes.
And there was always this thing of, as an actor starting out, about trying to gain the approval of casting directors, and being on the list and not being on the list, being seen, being not. And I have, as you know, I do a lot of coaching with actors now, and a lot of actors talk about casting directors still in that way. You know, she doesn't like me. You know.
I know.
And you want to go, hold on a minute, that really is not my experience of casting people. They're not actively doing that. What they're doing is looking, as you are, to try and find the perfect connection,
the best person for the job. And we don't care where you've come from, or who you're repped by, or who you're not repped by. Nobody cares. Even if you've been like, unless, like, even when people have kind of say, let's say, committed a cardinal sin, like being extremely rude to an assistant outside a waiting room or whatever, you know, that's which I really don't like. It happens so rarely. But even then, you know, nothing will stop me bringing in the right person for the job. You know, if it's the right person, you know, I mean, that's a rare example of something like that happening. But, you know, we get over everything, because what we want is just to put the right person in front of the right people and to do the best job we can do.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, it's a kind of, it's practical as well as kind
Yes,
of artistic, isn't it? It's a sort of,
yes,
it's you're looking for the win-win situation as well.
yes.
You know, because if you get the right person for the right job, you then get to feel good about it yourself, and then
Absolutely. And
and it
we
means
see the
your
success of
reputation.
it for our client.
Yeah, absolutely. So how does the process, you know, how does it kick off? I think a lot of actors are never sure about, we get, you know, excuse me, casting breakdowns come through to agents, and then the agents ring us. That's the way,
Yes.
we go in. But how does it start, from your point of view?
Okay. Well, at this point, we are very fortunate to have maybe like 12 production companies or more that we work with all of the time.
Yeah,
And we're their people.
yeah,
There are people. And we've forged long-standing relationships.
yeah.
They will also recommend us to international production companies
Right,
who come in who might ask them.
right.
So mainly the phone just rings or an email happens in our world.
Yeah,
And a job pops in and they check our availability like you check an actor's availability.
same thing, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah, same thing. They check, are we available? If it's confidential, they'll send us over an NDA before we can know anything about the project. Then we discuss timelines. Then we discuss our fee. Then we discuss, that'll be based on how many on the budget of the production, how many people we're casting, if there are other casting people attached in different countries, where we come on that level, who's the main casting director, if we're just doing local day casting or if we're doing the whole lot. So every job can vary there on where we stand, and we're kind of open to all those roles. We like, we like working with some of the amazing doyens, a lot of them being female of the casting world in
yeah,
LA and New York and London.
sure,
We
sure.
love being in charge of the whole project ourselves. We're really open in that world.
I mean, it's incredible. I never realized the kind of parallels that there are between that and acting is extraordinary.
Yeah.
An email comes in, and you might get this, or you might get a text,
Yeah.
or this, or a phone call, or whatever. And then some days, sometimes you're going to be working on kind of local things that are going to be
Yeah.
small, kind of like local projects. Other
Yes.
times you can go off internationally, and you can be away doing
Yeah.
things. And so there's a great
Damn
deal of sort
right.
of similarity, isn't there? What?
Damn right. There is a total similarity. And I
Yeah.
think it's also really helpful for actors to realize that, like, I thought like you did, Nick, when I was younger, and I was acting, I remember going down to the payphone in my school in Alex before they chucked me out, and
Right.
and ringing Ross Hubbard up from the payphone and asking her, did I get a call back for War of the Buttons in like 1992, and I was 12 then, and she said, is this the annoying redhead girl? Because before I started dyeing my hair red, I was a redhead too.
All right.
And she said, yes, you did get a call back. And I remember putting down the phone. I was supposed to be in physics class and just going, and that feeling was such a buzz. And it's the feeling I now get when we nail a project, when the right person, it fits in like a jigsaw piece into the project.
Yeah.
It's the same rush of, yes, we did it.
We got it, and we got it. And then you've got 5 of you in your company. And so is there a way you allocate things? Or
Yes. There's kind of a level of like seniority of the way that some people say who are coming up the ranks will be more in charge of kind of booking, avail checking, following up, getting scripts to people.
Sure.
And then through that way they learn who everybody is.
Right.
And then at the other end of my casting director colleague Katie, my casting associate Sarah, we'll do a lot of the selects. So we will choose who we want to see.
Right.
And then myself and Katie do a lot of the kind of negotiations, the contract negotiations and that kind of thing. That tends to be our neck of the woods.
Right.
So because there's a lot of business, there's a lot of maths in casting, a lot more than people would assume. I quite like it, but it's not for everyone.
You mean contracts and negotiations and all of that kind of stuff? Yeah.
Negotiations backwards and forwards and dotting the I's and crossing the T's. Now, we only get involved in that on the bigger projects. On the smaller ones, the production will do it. On the bigger ones, we do it. And I quite enjoy it, I must say. It's an area I like, but some people really dislike it, and they'll find somebody to do it for them. It doesn't mean you can't be a casting director,
Sure. That's interesting, though, isn't it? Yeah, that's fantastic. And how did COVID hit you all then when that happened? Because that must have been like it was for us. I mean, suddenly someone, we were all. I was in New York at the time. We were doing Hamlet over there, and we come back, and suddenly it's like whoom, everything's gone. Broadway shut down, West End shut down, all of that.
Oh my God, it was so sad that dark day. For theatre and still,
Yeah.
you know, and I feel my heart goes out to all of you, all of my colleagues in the theatre currently, you know, because I know certain things are now happening on screen again, but
Yeah.
we're still very aware of the big loss that is there, the gaping hole that is there in the theatre. Just can't wait to be sitting there again and seeing you, Nick, and all of your friends and colleagues on the stage again. I miss it hugely. So when I remember on the 12th of March, myself and Katie, we were working late. And then I think that was the day that that it was announced, when Leo announced it. It was either the 12th or the 13th. And we worked late. We ordered in pizza and wine. And we sat in the office and we said, okay, well, Katie should get the train down to Cork because she travels between Cork and Dublin. And we kind of said, we closed up the office and we didn't know that we would actually never work in that office again.
Wow.
I used to go in sometimes until August to when the lease was up, but I was on my own. Everybody else was working from home. We all work over Slack now, using Zoom and Slack. So we're all scattered, none of us together in the same room.
So strange, isn't it?
So
strange.
that's been unbelievable. Then we stopped for the fish pond side of our business, for the subscription base. We stopped subscriptions for every actor, and we invited every actor in the country to join, free of charge. And we started giving talks and bringing the community together. And we loved it. We found we really enjoyed it. So that was kind of something we felt we could do to be instrumental in keeping people occupied, busy, honing their, if they felt like it. Like I'm against the idea of people feeling like they should use every minute, especially currently, to be, you know, furthering their skills. I think people should also
you should live your life as well, absolutely. But it's a very generous thing to do. It's a very useful thing. I did, I don't know if you know, I did similar thing. I did I gave courses away and things like that, and I did like 3 Facebook Lives a week for 6 months. 6 months.
Yes, same with us.
Training course, and actually, it was wonderful. It was absolutely fantastic. I found it quite incredible.
So did we, Nick. It was kind of a bit magical, and it felt really like we were in a privileged position to have the community there to talk to and get feedback from them, and to still feel connected.
Yeah, completely.
We were all isolated physically.
Absolutely. And of course, the great benefit for me with coaching now is that I don't have to explain to anyone how to use Zoom. I mean,
that's it. So we've been championing remote casting for years, and now everybody loves it. Now everybody gets how practical it is and how useful it is.
But what about, you know, like say, you know, castings that you need to do now? I mean, I've done a couple of films and things in the last couple of, you know, few months where we've had COVID tests and that kind of thing. We've been wearing masks and all of that. You know, the COVID protocols, all of that changes your business too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have done basically no in-person casting in 8 months. We had one recall in a park, and that was the only one that actually the potential lead for that job had COVID, or ended up in between getting COVID. So it was unrelated to our recall situation, but it was just mad how it brought it home again. So he was absolutely fine. It was very mild dose, thankfully. And but that's the only audition we've done in 8 months. The only one recall in person. So everything else our first stage is by self-tape, and our second stage is live like this, like we're chatting now over Zoom.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is the thing, isn't it? The whole remote thing, everything is changed. I mean, like, you know, I've done, you know, interviews on Skype and on Zoom and on, you know, all sorts of things now. I mean, that's just the way it's happening. In fact, it was going that way anyway, I think, pretty much.
I think so too. I think people are, it'll never go back to the way it was, because there are so many, it's so advantageous for, in terms of, say, travel costs for actors, in terms of being able to see people who are maybe engaged in another project in another country, or who are living in another country, or all these reasons, we still are able to consider everybody, and it's better for everybody.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It made it much more level playing field now. It genuinely is. You know?
I'm a fan.
I mean, I used to do a lot of coaching with people who came back from LA after they'd done the kind of like the pilot season, you know, because those who were successful obviously had a great time, but those who didn't would come back kind of stressed and exhausted and, you know, beaten up, you know. And you think, well, you know, you don't have to have that so much now, you know. It's not gonna, I mean, there are downsides, I suppose.
Yeah, there are.
Lose the personal kind of thing, of course you do, but there's so many pluses. And yeah, I can't see it going back. I mean, doesn't
I can't either. Like, I do miss in the room, and I think we will always have in the room for you know, for down the road, if it's available to us, and when you're further down the road in a casting. So say if you're doing direct offers and you're having a chat, or if you're wanting to just do an interview rather than an audition, or if you're on recall stage and you're honing it down, there is an advantage then. But
it is still
not totally necessary.
No, absolutely, it's not totally necessary. And then, you know, and it's going to be safer for a while anyway. Well, you know, once the vaccine comes in, which is all looking as if it's coming fairly much sooner than we thought, perhaps, you know, and that's going to start coming in, we're going to go back to something similar. But I suppose it's just going to be a process, isn't it? You know, seeing what happens.
I think it'll unfurl itself as we go, and I'm excited to see how that happens. But I think as long as you're willing to trim your sails and adjust your course and be flexible, the world is your oyster. You know, I think that's the key, is just being not like you don't want to get stuck in a way you are delivering certain lines or certain piece of dialogue. You don't want to get stuck in the way that you feel the industry has to be.
Absolutely.
You just have to all be like in every industry, I think, now, be ready for change.
Everything has changed, absolutely. So going to this kind of like the whole notion of this remote casting now, the way that's happening, what are some of the things that people are doing they shouldn't be doing, and some of the things they should be doing that maybe they're not doing?
So let me give you a couple of little pointers, and then I also will point your audience in the direction of I'm part of the CDA in the UK, the Casting Directors Association, and we've put together a 14-minute maybe video about Zoom recalls on their YouTube channel.
Oh, I'd love to pass that on. Absolutely.
Yeah, the CDA Association's YouTube channel, and it's specifically about this. So there's all great advice, but I could just give you a few highlights here, which would be, really, like, the things that really help us are, so like I was saying, we nearly always are at recall stage when we're using Zoom. So now we pass you through our assistant in the waiting room, who will adjust your camera with you and that kind of thing. So I would say nearly every actor, even when they've done something before, doesn't have their camera at eye level like yours is now and mine is now. We are at about eye level with our cameras, and that is where you want to be. So some people will have it down below them, and we're looking up at them. It's not a good angle for anyone.
Because then you end up being here, don't you?
Yes. So what you want to be able to do is basically think of eyeballing the camera. And then if you're going to look for an eye line, it's always okay to ask where for an eye line, but I'd usually say just to the right of camera, just slightly off, exactly either side, just slightly off. So what I would do is try and set up a permanent or semi-permanent setup in your home, in your flat, in your studio space, wherever the hell you live. I have a setup for doing for having chats like this, for doing workshops and things like this. It's really cost effective and simple. I have a ring light that you can do a little bit of research online. They're very, you can buy exactly.
There we are.
It's perfect. And I mean, you can be talking you can start to 20, 30 euros. You don't need one for much more than that. Mine didn't cost any more than that. Also, a mic can be handy for if you're recording from your phone. I'm not using one now, but I do sometimes. So little piece of equipment and a tripod. That's it. I'd say those three things. That's it.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's all you need.
What about things like, what about sort of, I mean, one of the things I notice quite a bit is that the level of energy sometimes is a little low in terms of, would you say do you notice that? Is that?
Yes.
Sometimes, it's very easy to sort of feel a bit.
Yes, it is actually. That's a really good point.
And you can sort of, it tends to be when people are being a bit kind of like naturalistic. And it kind of takes a little bit of the life out of stuff. And oddly enough, there's almost a sense that you need like 5% more energy than you think you do.
It's like when we do voiceovers, right? When you suddenly if you take the image away and you're just relying on the voice, you have to bring 20% more pep to something, to give it a feel. So you're right, it is the same. So one thing that can be helpful is to stand up, is to have a standing situation, or at least have the flexibility to be able to move to one. Because always, I think getting up on your feet can be helpful. Now, it doesn't work for every scene, and it's not necessary for every scene. But if you feel it would be very helpful for the scene, do it. And maybe another thing is to have some props nearby that might help you. Just, you know, whether it's a cigarette, whether it's a champagne glass, whether it's a book, you know, something, whatever your character is doing.
Absolutely.
Just to be a little bit prepared in advance and have those things there, and maybe say to the casting director or director, would this help? Would this not? How do you guys want to play it?
One of the things I coach actors to use, I call it an activity. You know, that you have an activity of something that you're doing.
Yes.
Because when you, it's so useful, it's great because it makes it look, you know, if you're kind of like looking at, I don't know, look, let's say you got some playing cards or something. Like, for example, you know, you're just playing cards or something, and you're choosing something. You're actually putting down, you know, you're making something happen. You're making it into a scene. It becomes more like a scene.
I totally agree with that.
Much more, but it also does a wonderful thing for actors as well, is it takes your concentration away from the whole thing of, oh God, I'm doing a performance.
Totally.
And it brings you into that, and it's a bit more, it gives you more of that sense of, you know, that someone is just eavesdropping in on real life. You know,
exactly like we've caught in on a moment.
Absolutely. It's like, you know, you've got to get the stuff sorted, you've got to have the technical stuff done, but then you've got to think about, you know, the way you can communicate the story as well, isn't it? You know,
definitely. And that's where your coaching is very useful, and what you can help to show people. I had this experience where one of the most fun and interesting experiences that has ever happened to me so far, shall we say, which was being part of the Pan production of Playing the Dane, the rehearsal Playing the Dane.
Yeah.
So I was playing the casting director on the stage casting director. So I was playing myself.
Typecasting.
I was great. I've long since left the world of acting when this happened. This was only, when was this now? Maybe 8-9 years ago. And we toured in New York and all around Ireland and various other places. It was great. But I was peeling an orange in the scene. So I would stand up from the audience and walk up, sit in and then I'd be peeling an orange as I went off to get the first Hamlet and the second and the third.
And it just takes something of the stress of the whole thing.
Yeah, I agree.
That's wonderful to hear. Ali, this is so useful. It's so helpful.
Well, thanks.
Let me ask you this. How can people kind of like, you know, get in contact with you? What are the do's and the don'ts about doing that? And
yes, absolutely. Contact etiquette is a thing.
Very important. Very important. It's so important, whoever you're talking to.
Yes.
You know, if the way people request for contacts to be made must be.
It must be adhered to. You know, if you want your submission to be viewed favorably, you do your little bit of homework.
That's right.
Firstly, I mean, you wouldn't believe, and I know this is like kind of mad, but the amount of people who aren't exactly sure who they're writing to or emailing or whatever when they submit. So whether you're an agent or a casting director, I mean, that's kind of like that's pretty much ABC stuff, you know.
It is.
So know who you're talking to. I'd say we get, I don't know, several people a week writing to us asking for representation. We don't represent anybody, anybody at all. We don't mind where you come from. We get people from everywhere. I bet you every casting director would say the same thing. I bet that it happens to us all. Then I would say, look at everybody's website. Nearly everybody will have set out how they would like you to submit, whether they'd like it to be a file attached. We like links for reels. We don't like to download stuff. So we like to watch it, and we'll watch it there and then. If somebody sends me a link with a 3-minute thing, I'll bounce in as soon as I have time. I put them all in a folder, and then I'll bounce through them, and I really enjoy watching them. So we enjoy submissions from everyone. But if you just look on our website of alicoffeycasting.ie, there's info of how we'd like to receive it. And I would say the same is true of most casting directors. And it's always going to be a little bit different. There are no absolute rules.
Absolutely.
So I just do your bit of research with each person, that every actor should kind of just find out how they would like to receive their information.
Totally, that absolutely wonderful. Great, that's great advice, and I totally second that. I think it's I mean, absolutely. I get weird, kind of, you know, hello, my name is so-and-so, can you please cast me in a movie? And
Yes,
I'm going,
exactly.
I wish I could. I'd love to. I'd love to.
Bizarro stuff, you know. Yeah,
but listen, Ali, thank you so much. This is so beneficial and so
it's my
useful,
pleasure.
and it really engaging and thoughtful, and I appreciate it so much. And thank you very much indeed. And so everybody, thank you very much. I'm going
Well,
to give
it's
you
my absolute pleasure. And Nick, if there was one more thing I was going to say, because I know you said to me in advance if there was anything else I wanted to say.
absolutely.
There's really, we've covered everything other than, oh yeah, you said about some do's and don'ts, right? About some, and that was really, so it just got my wheels turning.
Yeah.
And currently, obviously, a major don't is like, you know, if you are doing anything in person, you don't hug people or you shake hands or come in if you're not well. I mean, that probably should go without saying, but I'm just going to say it anyway. But also be off book. Okay. This is like, I know it's like, seems so obvious, but when we're looking at a project where people are being cast in various different countries, sometimes I feel that Irish actors have let themselves down a little bit, and I hate to say that because they're my friends and my colleagues, but about being prepared. Not obviously it's only some people some of the time, but if you're in LA or you're somewhere where it's unbelievably cutthroat, there isn't a person looking at a script who's even faltering on a line. So now don't let yourself to your audience to be one of those people ever either. Be off book, free yourself from the page. That'll give you the confidence then that you need to embody the character, to be free of trying to search your mind, because you can tell when somebody's looking for a word and when they're thinking as the character, you know.
Totally agree with that.
It's just such a simple one, and I'm sure you tell everybody, and we kind of all assume people will do it, but then they don't. So I'm just want to reiterate it because it's seemingly so obvious, but it's so important for you guys out there as actors, as well as to give yourself, each opportunity is so valuable and so meaningful, and it's always a learning opportunity. And the other thing I wanted to just say is, you know, when you're called to audition for anything, just know that you've been selected, you've been handpicked by that casting director. They want you to succeed.
They do.
Let yourself take that confidence boost and say, nobody's there by chance. It doesn't work like that at all. And nobody's there to make up numbers. It doesn't work like that at all. We'd rather have like 3 top choices than 30 with some like fillers. That we don't work like that. So know that you have been wanted and you are chosen, and you're there for a reason, even if it's not 100% apparent to you at the time. So try and roll with it and see. And also, if you really don't like the script, don't read for it, because sometimes people come in and then they start giving out about the script and you're like, maybe this one isn't for you.
No, don't do it. Because this is somebody's baby. It really is.
That's it. And so often it can be a writer director and things like that, you know.
Yeah, and not to get confused. Wonderful. I mean, that's so good. Such good advice. Totally. I echo everything you say. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thanks.
I mean, really do. You know, learning your lines, it's a courtesy thing as well. I mean, it really is. You know, people are waiting. You know, they're working. They are professionals, and they want.
Yes.
You know, and you know, you look better when you do
it. And you give yourself so much more chance, because you've got the freedom to be flexible. If somebody asks you to read a different way, you're not totally thrown because you're only clinging onto the lines by the skin of your teeth. You know them.
And I always say you're one self-tape away. You really are.
Okay, I got one great story, anecdotally to finish on. Sorry if I'm going on, Nick.
No, not at all.
Just to echo what you're saying, I love this. The actor Duncan Lacroix, who's in Outlander, he auditioned through us via self-tape, which went off to the producers in LA. They cast him from that one self-tape, and now he's been in like 4 and 5 seasons of Outlander. Absolutely. And he was always a great guy in smaller productions here in Dublin. He always stood out as somebody excellent. And I kind of always thought, well, it's just a matter of time. But you never know what happens for everybody. So he might have been maybe 45 when this happened for him. And boom, he was off. And it just, nobody cared about actually where he'd come from, what he'd done before. They didn't even want to see it. They just went, that's our guy.
That's him.
That's it.
That's
So
it.
you're always one tape away, and I love that too. My dad used to say to me when I was young, "You're only a phone call away," and now you're only a self-tape away.
You're one self-tape away. It's
Yeah.
absolutely true. I mean, it's just the way it is, and it's why it's important to have hope. It's why it's
Yes.
important to recognize that when you are called in, they want you.
Yeah.
Why you can feel
Big time.
confident about what you want to do, and believe it, baby, because it's true.
Damn right.
Ali, thank you so much. That is just priceless.
It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely priceless. Ladies and gentlemen, Ali Coffey.
Thank you. I look forward to seeing you all soon, either on the screen or in the room.
Lovely. Thanks, Ali.
Thanks, Nick.